This week, I was inspired by Tokyo Revengers, an anime that challenges traditional masculinity by giving us a main character that cries like a baby, but is still able to garner respect from his peers. But can crying and gaining respect go hand in hand in the world we live in? Or is this just some anime mumbo jumbo? I went out and asked people questions to find out the answer. In cosplay, of course. First things first, we gotta figure out if crying is a normal thing in society, because Takemichi cries a lot.
When's the last time you cried?
Probably this morning. I cry all the time.
Like a month or so ago?
Probably within last month.
A month, actually, I take that back. I cried a couple days ago.
When's the last time you cried?
Probably been 2 weeks for me.
2 weeks?
Guy cries a lot.
Yeah,
He
no,
cries a
I'm
lot?
Our
a
sons cry a lot.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Would you be comfortable sharing what it was about?
I felt like my work ethic was getting questioned, so.
Oh yeah. So when I got COVID, and I had to tell my kids.
Watching Naruto and
What scene?
Sasuke and Itachi were fighting.
That's a pretty good reason to cry.
It was intense.
Yeah, for sure.
From these interviews, we can come to the understanding that crying is normal, whether that be for serious situations or not so serious. This is reflected in Tokyo Revengers, as the main character Takemichi cries in almost every situation. But if crying is so normal, why do we tend to look down on men that cry?
Because we've been conditioned that men who cry are weak.
I think it's typically seen as like a form of like weakness,
Yeah.
like showing emotion.
I grew up in the modern confederacy with men who don't cry.
Right.
They're either angry or happy,
Yeah.
and a lot of weakness implied with softness.
So yeah, our environment carries a lot of expectations for how both men and women should act in situations. And if we look at Tokyo Revengers, we can see that the main character, Takemichi, is in a very hyper-masculine environment, a Japanese biker gang, where violence and might are of the utmost importance when determining the pecking order. Which really begs the question of how a guy like Takemichi, who can't fight, is physically weak, and cries non-stop, is able to gain respect in said environment. Well, we'll answer that by the end of this video. But for now, let's try to figure out if there's any reasoning as to why society places those expectations on men.
So as a society, we see men as like they're supposed to be the leaders, the strong ones.
Yeah, it could be seen almost as like a signal of like instability in a man versus like a woman.
Because I guess you're not working while you're crying, you're not solving problems while you're crying.
I know in older or past generation, the male was supposed to be the more powerful one in relationships, in families, and anything.
So from these interviews, we can gather that society at large places these expectations on men because they are held to be the problem solvers, the leaders, and the emotionally stable amongst the people. And crying is seen as an emotion that inhibits all of those things from taking place. So of course, crying will be looked down upon in men by ourselves and of course by our peers. Most of the time even transforming itself into anger, as it's an emotion that oftentimes fuels action. But do these expectations only hold in place for men or people with a leadership position in general?
Do you think a leader is held to a higher responsibility to not cry in front of like their subordinates, or?
Depending on like how powerful you are, what you're powerful for, and how people look up to you. I think if you've always been looked at a certain way, then you feel a need to be that certain way all the time.
There's kind of this idea of like, you know, you gotta present a strong front
Yeah.
in front of the troop. You gotta lead, you gotta be hard.
So from this, there's no doubt that leaders carry a certain responsibility to them. And more often than not, this will manifest itself as you being the emotional rock for others to lean on.
You know, you have to be the rock in some areas in life. Like, you know, you see your lady cry, it may like want to make you cry, but you know, in front of her, you know, you gotta be that strong one, you know?
Yeah.
Take Mikey, the leader of the Tokyo Manji gang. He's very emotionally conservative, showing his best in front of his subordinates, only allowing himself to cry when he is alone. Which, funny enough, is actually a common occurrence for most men.
I'd say there's maybe 4 or 5 people that I could actually like cry in front of. Other than that, like I'll cry by myself.
If I cried in public, like I would feel ashamed of that. I don't think there's a problem with it, but I think other people would judge me for sure.
Yeah. I feel like as men, our emotions and like our sadness kind of like makes other people uncomfortable. It's like, oh, you don't want to be that guy to like put somebody on the spot to like cry.
That person's just kind of sitting there like,
Now, it's very understandable to look at holding back your tears as a toxic trait. Crying is a healthy stress reliever after all. And boy, are these characters stressed. But at that same time, in many situations in life, it's not favorable to be overly emotional. But when exactly does that go too far?
You know how people sometimes want to push kind of vulnerability when it's not the time? And it's almost as though I'm going to cry to show you that I'm with you. So I think if it comes naturally, fine, but don't push it.
Yeah, because it's almost like it can become like manipulative.
Exactly. Manipulative crying, I've done it, definitely.
What did that look like? Nah, we need some examples.
It's like if you cry hard enough, your husband can't get mad at you, that kind of thing.
Do you ever feel like it's too much to cry? Like, when does vulnerability go too far?
I think there's a difference between feeling sorry for yourself and doing nothing but crying.
if there's something that's bothering me, I'm not gonna cry about it like all the time. Like one good cry is like good.
Yeah, it's just so time consuming. It is so time consuming.
You should probably, get stuff done first, no doubt, dude.
Yeah.
So I think we made it pretty clear that emotional vulnerability tends to go too far when it causes you to negate your responsibility. In Tokyo Revengers, Takemichi has the responsibility of changing the past to save people's lives in the future. And sometimes his emotional outbursts cause him to negate that responsibility. However, in that same light, some could even argue that Takemichi's crying allows him to reflect on the next actions to take.
Some people are just naturally more emotional, and that's how they build strength to get over whatever feelings they're feeling.
Yeah.
Then like cry it out.
Yeah, kind of like using the bathroom.
There you go, right. Like
Yeah.
it's all just like this pent up emotion of sadness that you'll feel.
Yeah.
And like literally your tears are just like you going to the bathroom.
So with all that being said, how is Takemichi able to gain respect in his hyper-masculine environment? Well, it's because despite his weakness, the cowardice, and the crying, Takemichi is able to get up again and again and help people that need it. He still takes action. And for me, it's very touching to see his peers recognize this as time goes on. But how does that translate in real life for men?
To be able to like show your vulnerability and your soft spot, like that takes a lot of guts, I think.
Yeah.
To expose yourself like that. It's a difficult thing to do, like if you decide to do it.
I think there's so much therapy and benefit in being able to be your authentic self and show your vulnerabilities, and I think
Knowing how you feel and expressing that shows a lot of power and security in who you are and confidence.
I think ultimately like your actions speak louder than words, and while like crying like is an action, I think the other things that you do like with your life will really show your true strength.
Now, in popular media created for the male gaze, feelings and actions are oftentimes seen as two separate entities that, if you want to get stuff done, you'll ultimately have to let go and kill off your emotional, vulnerable side. However, a character like Takemichi is so endearing because he constantly shows us how that's wrong, how you don't have to run away from your wounds to become stronger, that no matter how much we cry, we can still get up again and again and demand change. But let me know what you guys think. Have you noticed something like this when watching Tokyo Revengers? Go ahead and leave that in the comment section. And if you're in the mood for another video, check out what I had to say about Demon Slayer. Well, anyway, my name is FitZanime. Live in love and have a good day.